Amos chapter 3, verse 1. Hear this word that Yahweh has spoken against you, O children of Israel. So remember that kind of like half, perhaps a third of the previous chapter had to do with the sins of Israel and the punishment that was coming for it. Now Amos 3 continues with Israel. So that shows. Also, remember how it talked about Yahudah and he mentioned 2 verses. Now there were like 7 verses of Israel, which is kind of like few and many when it comes to the sins or how far they have gone from Yahweh. Hear this word that Yahweh has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Mizraim. So by saying against the entire clan, it's pretty much saying, when I say Israel, I mean all of the people, including the Yahudim, not just the 10 tribes of the north, right? So hear this word that Yahweh has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Mizraim, saying, you alone have I known of all the clans. Pretty much this clan, right, is like tribe. Only you have I known of all the families. So yeah, what they are translated there as clan, sometimes they translate it as families, just in case. All right, so you alone have I known of all the clans of the earth. By saying you alone have I known is not saying that Yahweh has no knowledge of the other nations. Remember that to know is the verb that is used for sexual relations in the sense of becoming one with. Because when a husband has sex with his wife after they marry, they become one through that act. When Adam knew Chava, they were one flesh, as he himself said. So here we're seeing how Yahweh is telling his people that Israel is the nation with whom he wanted to become one. It is the nation with whom he made a covenant. Obviously, it's not talking about the knowledge of their existence or of their actions, for Yahweh knows all, everything. So you alone have I known of all the clans of the earth. Therefore, I punish you for all your crookedness. Therefore, I punish you for all your crookedness. So there's a reason why the punishment comes to Israel, and even why it has seemed for human history to be harder than on the nations. And it is because of our closeness. We need to be more pure, more set apart. Also because of our closeness to the light, our actions are seen more, meaning our bad actions, our stains, because Yahweh is focused on us. But then after we finally accept Yahushua and they kill the 2 witnesses, Yahweh will turn his focus onto the nations to punish. Also, it is said that Yahweh has separated all of our punishments throughout history, so that at the end, we pretty much don't go through anything. And I mean, the chosen few, obviously the many still have to go through something, but that will be the last something after all the pain that our people have to go through in history. Yahweh has separated all that pain that we had to go through throughout history. The nations have not gone through the same, because now it is the time for their punishment. So that is when all of their punishment will be fulfilled at once, while Yahweh, because of mercy, separated ours throughout history. You alone have I known of all the clans of the earth, therefore I punish you for all your crookedness. Would 2 walk together without having met? Right? So like I said, Yahweh wanted to walk together with Israel, just like he wanted to become one with us through Mashiach. Would two walk together without having met? Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion give forth his voice out of his den unless he has caught? They are rhetorical questions. Does a bird fall into a snare on the earth where there is no trap for it? Does a snare spring up from the earth if it has not captured prey? There are kind of exceptions to some of them, but are just from chance in this reality, as in Murphy's law. Something might hit the snare and you might spring up even without capturing prey, but that is not the way it happens. That's not how it works. The snare springs up when it caught something. And so are these questions the same, rhetorical? Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion give forth his voice out of his den unless he has caught? Now, remember that when it comes to the truth, to the good side, Yahushua is from Yahudah as the Lion of Yahudah. The last comes to fulfill that part of the lion, for Yahushua came as the lamb. But when we see the first and the last, or even the two witnesses, can be seen as the lion and the young lion. Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? There was a prey, and that was Halel. That's why Yahushua had to come from Yahudah and speak to the people. Does a young lion give forth his voice? So you see roar and voice, like the word and the voice, first and the last. Out of his den, unless he has caught. He has caught the enemy through what Yahushua did when he came. And it's interesting also to see out of his den, like the last who comes like a bow. So he's going to throw his arrows from wherever he's at. And then he says, does a bird fall into a snare on the earth where there is no trap for it? Lucifer, as a fallen angel, would not fall into a snare unless Yahushua had come to prepare it, to catch him. Does a snare spring up from the earth if it has not captured prey? If a shofar is blown in a city, do the people not tremble? And like I said, they are rhetorical, but at the same time, sadly, there are exceptions to the norm. For instance, if somebody is deaf, he won't tremble when the shofar is blown. And there are many people who, because of following idols, they are spiritually deaf. So even when the lads will be blowing the shofar, they won't tremble because they won't care. They won't pay attention. They won't believe. The trembling comes when you know what is happening. So when the shofar blows for a war, people start to tremble because they know something's coming. If a shofar is blown in a city, do the people not tremble? If there is calamity in a city, shall not Yahweh have done it? This is important, something I was mentioning yesterday. Whatever happens, even if it's calamity, it was Yahweh who allowed it. And I use the word allowed it because there are a lot of people who do not understand and would see this, like the ones we were just mentioning, to say that he's evil because he has done it. He brought calamity. But the point is that nothing moves, nothing happens unless Yahweh allows it to happen or makes it happen, which is kind of the same, but it depends on the reason why and the source of that happening. For instance, the calamity would come from an enemy whom Yahweh allows to bring calamity. Healing will come from Yahweh directly through Mashiach or through an angel, through a Ruach. So that's the separation we must do. There's a difference between what Yahweh wants and what Yahweh needs to do in the sense of judgment. He is righteous. He is a judge. So he must judge. If there is need for righteousness to happen, he will bring it and make it happen, even if those in the world do not want it. There is only time that has to pass for it to manifest. If there is calamity in a city, shall not Yahweh have done it? For the sovereign Yahweh does no matter unless he reveals his secret to the servants, the prophets. This is such an important verse that everybody should remember for many reasons. One of those reasons, because when you try to talk to a Christian in general about the end times, one of the things that they say to avoid listening to you or studying is nobody knows the day or the hour. And what does that have to do with anything? So just because you don't know the day, you're not going to prepare. In fact, not knowing the day is so that you prepare every day, so that you understand that it could happen any day. So you might as well prepare for today and for tomorrow and for the day after. But those who are wicked use it as an excuse to not study. I don't care. Doesn't matter because nobody knows. Who knows? Whatever. However, just like the scripture said, nobody knows the day or the hour, only the Father, not even his angels. The same scriptures that say that also say this. For the sovereign Yahweh, the Father, does no matter unless he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. So either it is revealed already through the prophets in scriptures, but hidden, and it's only a matter of him revealing it to us in our time, because he does no matter unless he reveals it. So he won't make it happen unless he reveals it first, because it will be a contradiction. The problem is that people do not believe his prophets. So when the two prophets, the two witnesses manifest, people won't believe them. And one of the reasons not to believe them will be their claim of nobody knows the day or the hour. Okay, but the scriptures say he does nothing unless he reveals it to the prophets first. So he did it to the prophets of the past. It is written, it is hidden. Now the two prophets of the end, the two witnesses of Revelation 11 must appear to reveal that which is hidden to those who are living in the times. For as Mashiach told those of 2,000 years ago, it is not for them, it is not for you to know the times. So 2,000 years ago was not the time to know the time, because there were 2,000 years, and that would have made them not want to do a bunch of things that they needed to do. And it was good that they did them, because now we have the new covenant written, and their actions, their testimony in order to help us. So it was not for them to know the times. That's why he also told them no one knows the day or the hour. It was not the time to reveal the time. But since Yahweh does nothing, no matter, unless he reveals his secret to his servant, the prophets, that means that when he is about to do it, he will have to reveal it, because he is true and he fulfills the scriptures. So he will be going against his own word, a thing which he doesn't do, of course, if he were to do something without letting anybody know. I hope that's understood. So also it's saying that when calamity is about to strike, Yahweh reveals it as he is doing it. Yet people don't care. And some people care more about their own emotions, so they just don't follow the Messiah, they just go into depression and sadness, and that's why they reject you and what you have to say, because they don't want to follow the Father, so they try to avoid knowing what is coming. For the sovereign Yahweh does no matter unless he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. Kilo Yaseh, because no doing, Adonai Yahweh, a thing, because he won't do Adonai Yahweh a thing if he doesn't reveal it to his servants, the prophets. Reveals the secret, his secret, to the servants, the prophets. A lion has roared. Who is not afraid? Interesting, right? Because the lion, the king of the jungle, so it is logical to be afraid when a lion roars. But it is kind of like asking, who can stand before the Most High, before the fire, the consuming fire? Yahweh is the, presents himself as the lion of Yehudah through Mashiach, who came from Yehudah. But on the other hand, we have the enemy, who also is like a lion, who goes around roaring, looking for whom he may devour. People are afraid of Satan. They should fear Yahweh. If they fear Yahweh, they won't be afraid when they hear Satan roar. A lion has roared. Who is not afraid? Remember, the who in Hebrew is me, who represents Mashiach. Those who are in Mashiach shouldn't be afraid of a lion roaring, because if it is Yahweh, it's not roaring against you if you are with him. And if it is Satan, you are protected and you have the strength to defeat him. And it is similar to when Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Was he afraid? No, because Yahweh was with him, is with him. A lion has roared. Who is not afraid? The sovereign Yahweh has spoken. Who would not prophesy? So you see how it mentions the lion has roared in reference to the sovereign Yahweh speaking, right? So the lion of Yehudah, if he speaks, how can people not be afraid? If people are not afraid, it's because they haven't understood or heard the roar. Like I mentioned regarding those who are deaf, right? They will be eaten. They won't see the lion coming. And they won't hear the lion. But this is interesting as well, because you see this. Let me go to Revelation 6. And it's kind of a longer explanation. I'll try to make it shorter. In the previous chapters of Revelation, we see that there are 4 creatures that surround the throne of Yahweh, right? The cherubim. They have 4 different shapes or faces. That of and this is the order in which they are given: a lion, an ox, a man, and a eagle. When we come to the book of Revelation 6, the chapter 6, the first 4 seals are open. Actually, more seals, but the first 4 seals are connected to riders on horses. After that, the last 3 seals are different. So the 4 separate from the 3. Those first 4 are announced by the 4 creatures that surround the throne of Yahweh. So the first creature which is mentioned is the lion. Therefore, that is the creature that opens or reveals the first seal. And it says, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals and heard one of the 4 living creatures, that will be the first, that will be the lion, saying like a sound of thunder. So he was roaring. Remember that the sound of thunder represents the voice of Yahweh. As when the thunder sounded, and Yahushua understood the words that Yahweh was sending to him. So the sound of thunder is the voice of Yahweh. The first creature was the lion. Now it says here that the first creature was saying, like a sound of thunder, come and see. And I looked and saw a white horse, and he who sat on it holding a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming and to overcome. That is the coming of the voice of Yahweh, the last, the one who will throw the doctrine to each part of the world with a bow, right? Like a arrow, each teaching. So when a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming and to overcome. So he will be he who overcomes. So that is the one to whom Mashiach offers the star of the morning star, the scepter, that the rod of iron to rule the nations, etc., etc. For it is he who overcomes in Revelation 2 and Revelation 3. Now, my point is that here is the lion, sounds like thunder. Sound of thunder is the voice of Yahweh. So that connect with the lion of Yahudah. This doesn't happen when the ox or the man or the eagle speak regarding the next seals. Only in this one is the sound of thunder. Same voice mentioned here. A lion has roared. The sovereign Yahweh has spoken. Who is not afraid? Who would not prophesy? If a lion roars, it is logical for humans, for animals to be afraid. Logical. When it comes to those who are with Yahweh, shouldn't be afraid, but that's another story. And then he says, the sovereign has spoken. Who would not prophesy? So if Yahweh speaks, somebody for sure will prophesy, because his words are not empty. They don't return to him empty. They fulfill what they were sent to do. So if Yahweh speaks, his servants who have an ear will listen. And if they listen, they will speak what he said. They will pass the message, many times without them even knowing that it was directly from Yahweh. Sometimes it's just what the prophet may feel to say, may think to say. That thought came from up above. The sovereign has spoken, the sovereign Yahweh has spoken. Who would not prophesy? Cry out at the palaces in Ashdod. Remember the name Ashdod? Can be translated as the fire of the beloved one. Cry out at the palaces of Ashdod and at the palaces in the land of Mizraim, and say, gather on the mountains of Shomron, and see the many unrests in her midst, and the oppressed ones within her. The names that it is mentioning here, Ashdod, Mizraim, Shomron, they all connect to the many. In contrast to the few will be saved, the many will be justified. When I say saved, I mean they will be transformed without experiencing death during this time, during the harvest of Revelation 14, of the seventh trumpet of Revelation 11. The many will be many people who will reject the truth, the two witnesses, and when they come for them to put the mark of the beast, they will reject it, so they will be killed. But after their death, Yahweh will resurrect them and allow them to enter into the kingdom. So cry out at the palaces in Ashdod. Like I said, the fire of the beloved one, like the fire that will kill the beloved one by the order of the beast, who will receive support from the many, sadly. And at the palaces in the land of Mizraim, the land of two limits, of two borders, Mizraim, that's what it means, but spiritually, it means the land of affliction. So it represents this world in general. We were rescued, redeemed from slavery in Egypt. We were going to the promised land, and we were going to get there in 3 days, like the 3 days the Mashiach was dead. But the people worshiped the golden calf, plus other sins that caused our people to be in the desert for 40 years, going around and around and around and around, which was all part of the plan in order for us to understand that there would be 40 jubilees between Mashiach and the fulfillment of the rest of the things that need to be fulfilled. So Mizraim, as well, Egypt represents the world. The desert represents the apostasy. The promised land represents what we received through Mashiach, eternal life, that promise. Shomerom means those who guard. They were supposed to guard the Torah, yet they didn't. They ended up guarding the lie. So it's also interesting that he mentions 3 different ones, because remember that just like Daniel, who represents the few, and his 3 friends who represent the many. 1 and 3 is the relation that Yahweh makes between the few and the many. Normally, the many are represented by the number 3, the few by the number 1. So interesting that he mentions 3 places, and then mentions even the word many. Cry out at the palaces of in Ashdod and at the palaces in the land of Mizraim, and say, gather on the mountains of Shomrom, and see the many unrests in her midst and the oppressed ones within her. So it's talking about the many within the world being oppressed because of the lie that they have followed. But they do not know to do what is right. Like I just said, the many who follow the lie, and therefore they are oppressed because they do not know they're following a lie. And when you tell them, they don't accept it, because as it is said, it is easier to deceive someone than to convince him or her that he or she has been deceived. So sadly, people do not accept that they have been deceived. And if it comes from somebody who is younger, if it comes from somebody who doesn't look like they want you to look, then it will be even worse. And normally those who are against the system do not follow the rules of the system, so therefore don't look like the system wants them to look. So that is also something that they see as something against us. But that is their issue because of their lens through which they are seeing us. They judge through appearances, not as the scripture tells us to judge. In fact, they say, do not judge, misinterpreting scriptures. And they say that while they judge. Basically, they judge you for judging. So, and see the many unrest in her midst and the oppressed ones within her. But they do not know to do what is right. This is sad. They do not know to do what is right. They don't know how to. They don't know what is right and what is wrong. Because as he was prophesied, they in the end times will call good bad and bad good, evil good and good evil. So they do not know to do what is right, because they have been taught to do what is wrong, to do what is evil. So that's why they need to be taught. That's why Yahweh sent the 2 witnesses who use the scriptures that have been there the whole time in order to show what is right. But they do not know to do what is right, declares Yahweh. These who store up plunder and loot in their palaces. A lot of people who are storing money and whatever they get from others through fraud and other ways, thinking that that is what will save them. They do not know what they are doing, even though they think to be smarter than everybody else. They think they are outsmarting people by getting their money, pretty much being thieves and other titles that would fit them, and Yahweh will judge them. For thus said Yahweh, the sovereign Yahweh, an enemy even all around the land, an enemy even all around the land, and he shall bring down your strength from you, and your palaces shall be plundered. In the beginning, we saw that he was talking to Israel, so this is something that will happen in Israel when it comes to geographical borders. but also something that has happened to Israel as a people throughout history, I repeat, and nowadays in our time to the many. Therefore, thus said the sovereign Yahweh, an enemy even all around the land, and he shall bring down your strength from you, and your palaces shall be plundered. Thus said Yahweh, as a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, so are the children of Israel who dwell in Shomron to be rescued, in the corner of a bed and on the edge of a couch. As a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, right? If a lion takes one of the sheep, the shepherd will try to save the sheep, yet may only be able to save an ear or a couple legs to go and eat. This case wouldn't be eaten because of the way he died. Just to remind, I was just saying. But the point is, as a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, just a remnant, just a little bit, so are the children of Israel who dwell in Shomron to be rescued, in the corner of a bed and on the edge of a couch. So it says, Israel shall be, so yeah, all right, who dwell Ayosh Bim, who dwell in Shomron, from the corner of the bed, and in Dameshek, those who live in Dameshek, the couch, Aresh. No, Eresh. Well, it appears as Aresh because of the fact that it's the last word, but it's normally pronounced Eresh, couch. Now, I find it interesting because remember how in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17, Yahushua speaks about there will be 2 in a bed, one will be taken, one will be left behind. The one who is taken will be taken from the bed or from the couch to die for not accepting the mark of the beast. But that will be the only way to enter into the kingdom. That's why it says, blessed are those who die in the sovereign after the 7th trumpet has blown, after the first half has passed of the last 7 years. Blessed is he who dies, because those who don't die would be because they got the mark of the beast, and those are cursed eternally. So going back, thus said Yahweh, a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear. So it's interesting that he's rescuing a part of it, but that part is dead, right? So he would have to use it for something else than he would normally use it. Just like the many, they will be rescued, but through death, and they will enter into the kingdom as the people, not as the kings, as the many, not as the few, as the utensils, not as the temple. So a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear. Interesting as well that it mentions 2 legs, like I was talking about the feet representing the end times and the good news, and the ear, it is what you need to hear. Those who have ears to hear, let him hear, right? Or the fact that the word of Yahweh, faith comes through the word of Yahweh, and the word of Yahweh through hearing, or faith comes through hearing, and hearing through the word of Yahweh. So they were not hearing. That's why they didn't flee. They were not following the good news. That's why they lost their feet. But in general, the point is that Yahweh will justify them after they have been caught by the lion. So after the beast has killed them, Yahweh will resurrect them. So are the children of Israel who dwell in Shomron to be rescued in the corner of a bed and on the edge of a couch. Here where he said the edge is where it seemed to have said Dameshek, verse 12 here. Ubin Meshech, and in Dameshech, Damascus. Verse 13. Hear and witness against the house of Jacob. So you see how we went from Israel to Jacob, because he's asking to witness against. Hear and witness against the house of Jacob, declares the sovereign Yahweh, the Elohim of hosts. Declares Adonai Yahweh, Elohim Sabaoth. Verse 13. Neum Adonai Yahweh Elohei Hatzebaoth. For in the day I visit Israel for their transgressions. Look at this verse. Interestingly enough, it's verse 14, numerical value of David, right? David, the king, from whom Mashiach would come and who represents the last. For in the day I visit Israel, like he already did 2,000 years ago, and he's about to do through the last. For in the day I visit Israel for their transgressions, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel. Couple things here. He's talking about visiting in the sense of bringing judgment, not just coming for a visit, right? So when he brings the judgment, the punishment, for in the day I visit Israel for their transgressions, we can see this as Yahushua came to visit the earth and Israel to pay for our transgressions. But here mainly is referring to come to bring punishment for their transgressions, which mainly refers to the end times, which is normally what for in that day refers to, those words, in that day. In this case, it's for in the day, because in the day I visit, because of their transgressions, Israel. So for in the day I visit Israel for the transgressions, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel. Interesting, because as I have mentioned many times, there are a lot of verses that tend to point to Bethel as the place for the death of the two witnesses, except Revelation, when it says that it will be in Jerusalem. So that pretty much seems to point to the fact that when it seems to be in Bethel is a representation because of the name of the place, because Bethel means the house of the mighty one. The house of the mighty one was in the mountain, the main mountain of Jerusalem. So, because that's where the house of Elohim would be, the temple, where they killed Mashiach, who said, destroy the temple and I will raise it up in 3 days. Jacob, who represents the last, lay down in Bethel and slept, which represents dying, just like when Eliyahu was about to be brought up to heaven. So it represents where the two witnesses, like Jacob and Eliyahu, died, but Yahweh resurrects them and takes them up. Bethel is a place, but also the meaning of the name means the house of Elohim, and the house of Elohim, when it comes to the temple, was in Jerusalem. So it is like saying, similar, I find this verse similar to when Yahweh said, from the blood of Hevel, the righteous, to the blood of Sechariah, who died between the temple and the altar. So it is like saying everything that he will punish for every death that they have caused to his prophets, to the righteous, he will bring judgment. And I find it similar. Now I'll read it again. For in the day I visit Israel for the transgressions, like he did through the first one, Yahushua HaMashiach, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel for the last one, who is connected to Bethel because of what Jacob did there in the name, because the name actually was given by Jacob. So he will punish for the beginning and for the end. For in the day I visit Israel for their transgressions, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places, meaning the temples that they build. And see how it says the slaughter places of Bethel. Bethel means the house of Elohim. Yet they build houses for false Elohim. They build houses for idols, slaughter places. Because remember also that we should give, I will read this verse because it's very important. Hebrews 13:15. And I think this translation is not, sadly and strangely enough, as good. So let me go to this one real quick. Hebrews 13:15. Therefore, by him, let us continually offer the sacrifice of praise to Yahweh. That is the fruit of our lips, confessing his name. This one isn't that better. They say giving thanks. However, you see how they put this A, you go down. The A means confessing, literally. So why do you write give thanks? Confessing his name. Confessing his name. Now, just because of that, let me, because I don't remember if that was the verse I was talking about the translation here. It's Hebrews 13:15. Through him, then, let us continually offer a slaughter offering of praise to Elohim. That is the fruit of our lips. You see, they say again, giving thanks to his name. But it says confessing his name. It's different. Similar, but it's different. Because giving thanks to his name can be done without knowing the name. I give thanks to your name, right? To the name of the Most High, as many Christians do. The name above every name, yet they claim another name. So, if we understand that in Hebrew it's saying confessing his name, that means that when you confess his name, you are given a slaughter offering of praise. So it is very important to confess his name, for that is the slaughter offering that we give nowadays. We don't bring an animal and kill the animal. We praise his name. We invoke his name. So now go into Amos. And I shall punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel. He will punish those who have been confessing other names, confessing the names of the idols of the false Elohim in their congregations, in their temples, in the houses that they claim are for the mighty one. Obviously, in the literal sense, it also refers to those who have killed animals in the name of another Elohim. So, for in the day I visit Israel for their transgressions, I shall punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel. And the horns of the slaughter place shall be broken, which represent the authority, and it also represents salvation or protection. That's why people would go and hold the horns of the altar in order to save themselves, because nobody would kill them while holding the horns. And the horns of the slaughter place shall be broken, and they shall fall to the ground. So that is like saying, I will take away your protection. Nothing will cover you. And I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house. Those who have two houses, right? Some don't even have one. They just rent a little space, right? So that shows also the difference between the ones he's talking to and the poor ones mentioned in the previous chapter, right? Because of the oppression that they have put us through. But also it is like saying, remember how the year separates in 6 months and 6 months. The first half ends in summer, the second half ends in winter. Those two halves represent the first and the last. The first and the last coming. So he just mentioned, for in the day I visit Israel for the transgressions, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel, Israel and Bethel as first and last. Now he's saying, I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house. Yahushua came to finish everything right before the summer. The last will finish everything right before the winter. So it is a saying also, right, the Jewish and the Christians. etc. Other ways of seeing it. And I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house, and the houses of ivory shall perish, right? Those palaces that those people in authority have, those empty houses full of empty rooms, while there are people with no house at all, with no roof over their heads. And the houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall be swept away, declares Yahweh. They will lose everything that they have very soon. It says here, Revelation 10:7 confirms verse 7 of Amos 3. Also Deuteronomy 29:29. Let me go to Revelation 10:7 first. In the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger, when he is about to sound, the secret of Elohim shall also be ended, as he declared to his servants, the prophets. Exactly, my brother. That's a great connection. The verse that we talked about a lot. 7. For the sovereign Yahweh does no matter unless he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. Like I was saying earlier, this book has a lot to do with the end times. He refers to the end times, even though certain things have been fulfilled in a way in the past. And this is one of those very important verses of the book. The sovereign Yahweh does no matter unless he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. So when we go to the book of Revelation, it says, but in the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger, meaning the seventh trumpet, just like it mentioned in that book of Amos, the shofar, the sounding, the blowing of the shofar. But in the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger, when he's about to sound, So right before the seventh trumpet sounds, the secret of Elohim shall also be ended. So what is the secret of Elohim? There are many secrets in scriptures that have been revealed. What is the last secret? Well, we just said, Yahushua said, no one knows the day or the hour, only the Father. So that's the big secret. Yahweh holds that big secret, and he will reveal it right before the seventh trumpet. So he will reveal what day it is right before the day comes, for only he knows the day and the hour. That was a great point, my brother Omar. But in the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger, when he's about to sound, the secret of Elohim, the secret of Yahweh shall also be ended, as he declared to his servants, the prophets, because he does no matter unless he reveals it to his servants, the prophets. So he will reveal that secret right before the seventh trumpet. Very important. So we gotta be aware and stay awake. Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret matters belong to Yahweh our Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever. So what has been revealed belongs to us because Yahweh revealed it to us. So it is like a gift that he gives you, the revelation of whatever matter may be. And then you pass it along to your children. And as he reveals something new for that other generation, is for the next generations, etc., etc. So at the end of times, as we just saw right before the seventh trumpet, the last secret will be revealed. And mainly the day and the hour of that seventh trumpet, which is interesting, right? Because when Mashiach said, no one knows the day or the hour, he's talking about the day and the hour of the seventh trumpet. So now seeing it over here is very interesting because that shows that Yahweh will reveal it right before it happens. So the secret matters belong to Yahweh Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah. So he reveals how to fulfill the Torah so that we teach it to our children, so that we may all fulfill the Torah according to the truth, to the spirit, not to the letter.